When we look at babies in medieval paintings, it's hard not to feel a mix of confusion and curiosity. These tiny figures don't look like babies at all. Some resemble tired old men with wrinkled faces, serious eyes, even receding hairlines. Others look like shrunken adults awkwardly squeezed into infant-sized bodies. So why did artists of that time portray children this way? Was it lack of skill, poor anatomy, or something deeper? To understand this, we have to step into the mindset of the Middle Ages. Back then, art wasn't about realism or capturing everyday life. It was about meaning, symbolism, faith. Almost every baby you see in medieval paintings is not just a baby, it's baby Jesus, and that's crucial. There was a common belief at the time that Jesus, even as a newborn, was fully divine, wise, powerful, aware. He wasn't seen as a helpless infant, but as a miniature adult carrying the full weight of God. That's where the idea of the homunculus comes from, Latin for little man. So artists portrayed Christ with adult features, a stern face, knowing eyes, and sometimes even a beard. These images weren't meant to be cute or accurate, they were meant to convey theology. This approach didn't stop with Jesus. It influenced how all children were depicted. Realism wasn't the goal. Delivering a message was. Medieval artists worked under strict religious guidelines. Their figures were symbolic, not lifelike. Bodies were stylized, faces often looked the same, and proportions were, well, more spiritual than scientific. Part of the reason was a lack of anatomical knowledge. Dissecting human bodies was forbidden by the church, seen as a violation of the sacred. Artists didn't study from real life, but from imagination, scripture, and tradition. The only people who had hands-on experience with anatomy were executioners, and they weren't teaching art classes. But there's another reason medieval babies seem so alien to us. Back then, society didn't really have a concept of childhood, not like we do today. Kids weren't viewed as little bundles of innocence. They were seen as unfinished adults, future workers, future wives, future monks. Their lives were tough, short, and often dangerous. Infants were tightly swaddled, sometimes with wooden boards inserted into their hats to shape their skulls. Noble families often handed newborns over to wet nurses or servants immediately after birth. There was little emotional attachment because many babies didn't survive. Infant mortality was high, heartbreak was constant, and society adapted by keeping its distance. Historical records from the time are filled with tragic, matter-of-fact stories. A 5-year-old scalded to death in a kitchen accident. A boy drowning while fetching water from a well. A 6-year-old trampled by a horse in the fields. Children were expected to work young, and their deaths were accepted as part of life. There was grief, but rarely room for sentiment. Meanwhile, most people were illiterate. Books were rare, expensive, and enormous, designed that way so they wouldn't be stolen or casually damaged. For the majority of the population, paintings and stained glass windows were their version of the Bible. Art was education. It was storytelling. It was spiritual instruction. Nobody expected it to reflect the world around them. It was meant to reflect heaven. But then came the Renaissance, and everything changed. Humanism arrived. Artists began to turn their attention not just to the divine, but to the human. The body was no longer just a shell. It was something to be studied, understood, even celebrated. Dissections became more common. Scientists, philosophers, and painters started exploring what it really meant to be human. This shift brought a radical change in how children were seen. A new idea emerged: that childhood was a distinct and valuable stage of life. That children were innocent, full of potential, and deserving of affection. Artists began painting them not as little adults, but as actual children. Playful, soft, emotional, alive. Even baby Jesus changed. He was still divine, but now he also looked like a baby. With round cheeks, gentle eyes, and the kind of warmth that felt real. Art was no longer just about conveying dogma. It was about connection, about showing the human side of the divine. So, the strange babies in medieval paintings aren't the result of clumsy hands or bad technique. They're windows into a world where childhood didn't mean what it means today. a world shaped by theology, tradition, and survival. And the transformation of those baby faces over time? That's a visual record of a society rediscovering empathy, curiosity, and ultimately, itself.